I am Rocco.
And no, you're not. Stop it.
Linux. I'm Rocco.
The head bob makes it complete.
I'm Rocco.
Really, dude? I don't have a head bob, do I?
Yes, you do.
Wow.
No, you don't. You don't really.
Hey. Ban them all. All right. Is everybody ready?
Let's do this.
As ready as.
Welcome to another episode of Destination Linux Podcast.
Welcome to episode 44. I'm Rocco.
And I'm Ryan.
And this is Destination Linux. This week, we're going to be covering Ubuntu Budgie. We're going to be covering Canonical, doing some crazy things on the GNOME advisory board. A little Kubuntu news and some gaming news, so stick around. So we have a lot of people on the screen here for some reason.
The show is expanding. It's growing.
So what's going on, Ryan?
We're adding in a producer. We're that fancy. We've basically grown to the point where we now have a producer, and that producer is Zebe.
How much are we paying him?
Oh my God, it's a fortune. Billions.
We can't afford it.
In IOUs.
No matter what it is, we can't afford it.
Many of you know Zebe from the community. He's an amazing individual, and he's offered to help with the show. And really, what this is it's going to be a huge benefit to the patrons because before the patrons, one of the key changes or benefits is they could get the show early on Sundays. But Zebe's going to help basically manage through the chat room and other things so that the patrons can actually watch the show live, which I feel so sorry for them so they can see all the behind the scenes madness that the show truly is, which of course all of our guests know, but most people don't get to see. So the patrons will get kind of that behind the scenes view. They'll get to obviously hear and see the episode live, the before we start recording, the after, which, you know, there's some good stuff in there. Lots of Rocco making fun of me.
There's a little bit of that, but you get your digs in.
Yeah. It goes two ways. So we're very happy to have Zebe here and help. So how that's going to work, if you're a patron, you can message Zebe and he will get you a Zoom link. You'll then come into the chat with your video disabled so you don't show up within the show, but then you can chat and ask questions through Zebe, and then he can come into the show and will every once in a while jump in and ask questions or add to the show. So it's definitely becoming a lot more of a group effort. Thus, we have more people. And then there's this other guy at the bottom. And I don't know who he is, Rocco. I've never seen him before.
But before we go into Dustin, Zebe, I just want to say thank you for helping us out.
Very much.
You're more than welcome, guys. I'm really looking forward to it. Thank you for inviting me.
All right, we're going to make Zebe magically disappear, and he'll be back later. All right, Dustin.
Howdy-ho.
What's going on, man? Now, I know that we've had you on the show in the past, and everybody probably knows you. Everybody in the community knows you. But for those of them that don't know you, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, basically, I'm just working with or part of the Ubuntu Budgie team. And that's really all I'm doing within the community. I tried to get a little more involved upstream in some of the Ubuntu regular community stuff as well, but busy summer hasn't allowed too much of that, but we'll get back into that, you know, now that things are calming down. Thank goodness it's fall. So oddly enough, you would think summer would be the mellow time, but it doesn't seem to be that way. Outside of that, kind of a sysadmin sort of man, and sometimes I'm around here.
And sometimes we find you playing CSGO.
That's right. Happens on occasion.
Now, I want you to tell people the truth, Dustin. When we played CSGO, we pretty much dominated, didn't we?
Yeah, that's really the case.
Don't lie, really. Don't lie, Dustin.
We destroyed those bots.
Look, it's not hard to dominate when it's against bots, and you can adjust the level accordingly.
Yeah, those bots, we set them to super kill or something. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, Dustin, you're a favored guest. I think you're definitely one of the first guests, I think, with the episodes that I've done. You do a lot within the community. And one of the reasons why you weren't doing so well in CSGO is because I kept asking you developer questions throughout the whole thing. You're extremely knowledgeable with it. And I actually learned a lot bothering you while we were playing CSGO. So we're going to have you actually do some of the news with us, which I thought would be fantastic, and add some of that brilliance into our show for the first time ever.
Well, at least now we know why the bots were adjusted where they were.
All right. Well, the big news is obviously 17.10 is out. So tell us about Ubuntu Budgie 17.10.
Sure. I mean, like all the flavors, we just had a release here in October. It was a busy one. A lot of them had a lot of great stuff. But I guess for us, one of the bigger things was bringing the GNOME stack up to 3.26, which is kind of neat that it's fairly current going into the release. So that's always good. There was a bunch of fixes. We had some header bar issues with the welcome app. So now we can actually move our welcome screen. So that's happened. We've got a bunch of additional translations. We've had our, in general, we've had a better community involvement this time around, which was a very nice surprise. Like our wallpaper was huge. We had over 200 and I think it was like 270 submissions for wallpapers, which is absolutely insane. Way more people getting involved in translations, so we had a much better turnout this time. We also, anything to do with GNOME Tracker dependencies, because in our testing we found that GNOME Tracker was sort of hogging everything out. So anything like Gphotos was swapped out for things like Gthumb, and we just sort of focused on those apps and, you know, ditched them. They're gone.
We have now added third-party applets into the welcome screen. So there's some additional Budgie applets that are available, which is always good for customization. The big one, or at least the biggest thing I think for 17.10 is the fact that Budgie Desktop version 10.4 is in there by default, because Ike had done a ton of great additions into 10.4 from the previous ones. You used to have to do it through like the backports repository, but that's in by default, so that's great. Terminix is now down to Tilix for the terminal. That was just more of a name change. I can't exactly remember why the developer had to do that. So we still have that in there. Quake mode by default, you know, F12, kind of the default for a lot of the drop-down ones. Caffeine, Nightlight. There were, you know, the traditional bug fixes. Like none of that's really a big surprise either, but, you know, bug fixes. We had some 3.26 GNOME related bugs that David and Jacob spend a lot of troubleshooting time on. So that was all cleaned up. We had some great QA ISO feedback. So that helped a lot. We actually had some community members, you know, updating stuff on the wikis, which was great because you always want to get more people in there sort of getting involved and getting more, you know, fingers on the keyboards. So that was good. And then we had some great Patreon donations in the last little bit. So that's nice. Huge for us. Like we're fairly small, so Patreon donations are awesome. And then just a couple days ago, the team just sort of decided that we wanted to throw a good chunk of that back up towards Solus and the Budgie Desktop. So we did a donation up there back to Ike and crew because, well, thank you. Thanks, guys, because without them, like our flavor really wouldn't exist, you know? So we inherit a lot of that great work that they already do. So, you know, it's a little something back up their way. And, you know, outside of that, Budgie is just kind of humming along. I think we got some pretty good defaults, and now we're starting to transition towards the 1804 release cycle. Those dates are obviously out and ready to go, and I think everyone's starting to kick that off. We already had some stuff committed in for that. David's done some commits and work, and we're just now getting ready to sort of hammer out what we want to focus on in 1804. You know, it's our first LTS as an official flavor. So that's pretty big news for us. Just because we've only had 1704 was our first one, and, you know, they're all short-term releases. So, so we're starting to work on that, but probably one of the best parts of the things that I'm excited about, we have a newer team member named Jacob, and he has been hauling cookies on lots of
way to go, dude. Way to go.
Yeah. Well, what almost came out of my mouth would not have been good. So he's been developing a bunch of new applets that right now we're just getting ready to release. to everyone. They'll end up in our backports repo, but they're not in there yet. We're just starting to get some of our community members to test them out. So we've got some great stuff like we have one called Showtime, which is just kind of a digital clock on your desktop, kind of like what Conky can do, but it's just a little more focused. In that, we've got things like window.
Well,
sorry.
Speaking of that,
okay,
like that, is that going to be under all the windows, over all the windows? Like Conky sits, you know, where Windows can cover it.
Windows can cover it. It's just on top. I don't know. To me, it'd be way too distracting to be over top of the windows. I mean, depending on what you're running on, if you're on a laptop, I think the last thing you want is something bludgeoning over top
Conky
here.
has some themes that do pop over the windows, and they're frustrating. The second I click on some of the options for that and it shows above the windows, or it's its own windowed, you know, thing like clock or whatever, I get rid of it. I don't want that.
Yeah, I would never want that. This is just meant to be a little lighter weight, just a neat little option that can be thrown on the desktop itself and sort of sit underneath.
Nice.
We've got another one called window previews. It's kind of like an expose of sorts. So Alt Tab gives you like the overview of all your applications on your current workspace. And then if you go with Super Tab, you'll get an overview of like the application windows that are on the current workspace as well. So each view, you can get either all your applications or just all your windows associated with one application.
Gotcha.
And they're kind of in an expose type view. And then also down at the bottom of the list, when you get the pop-up, there's like a bunch of bullet buttons and numbers that signify the number of open applications on your different workspaces as well. And then you can like click and go over there and sort of check that stuff out. We've also got just the concept of hot corners, you know, nothing overly new in computing, but you can just basically kick off any terminal command just with a hot corner, and it hibernates if you have the applet on, but you're not actually using it. So it should
explain that for a second. So I could set up like, I don't know, sudo apt-get upgrade as a hot corner, and I just move my mouse to the left corner and it executes that.
Bingo. Whatever you want to do, whatever you can think of. So you could do scripting.
Constantly nailing that.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's got a bunch of different use case for it. So like I used to use it to lock my screen just out of habit. I just knock it down to the right corner.
That's awesome.
My screen would lock and walk away. So basically anything that you can run from the terminal, you're going to be able to activate with a hot corner. Nice. Let's see, what else we got there? We got a wallpaper switcher. So a lot of our focus was sort of in the concept of multiple workspaces and just sort of customizing them to the way you want them. So the wallpaper switcher, by default, Budgie, when you set your wallpaper, it's the same across the board for all your workspaces. And what Wallpaper Switcher allows you to do is that you can set a unique wallpaper per workspace.
That is cool.
Yeah, and then as you flip over, it dynamically switches it in and puts that in there, and it'll remember whatever you set for each workspace.
Rocco, you're going to have to take multiple pictures of me now for every screen.
Oh my gosh, really, dude? No, I installed Budgie just last night.
Okay.
And some of the, I mean, okay, so they're just wallpapers, but some of the wallpapers were absolutely awesome in there. So I got to check that. I installed it on a separate hard drive, so I got to check that whole workspace switcher out.
What was your feeling when you logged in? Because I did as well, but I want to hear it from you first. Honest opinion when you first logged into Budgie after using what you've been using GNOME, right?
I've been using GNOME.
What did you think?
Okay, so my first reaction is it's a beautiful desktop.
Isn't it?
It is a beautiful desktop.
It was so funny because I love XFCE. I've fallen in love with it. But when I went into Budgie, I was like, wow, this thing is just gorgeous. You can't deny it. You just can't deny how beautiful it is. And, Nightlight and Caffeine are two, you mentioned them just kind of briefly overview, but they're two really cool apps.
Yep.
Because Nightlight allows you to basically remove some of the, it basically yellows your screen, right? It takes out some of that yellowness while you are, if you're at night, so you don't hurt your eyes, or also they've done studies to show that actually keeps you up by having that kind of blue light in there, right?
It definitely keeps you awake.
But caffeine's very important because caffeine, if you're watching any videos or doing any type of media consumption, your screen will automatically lock itself. Well, caffeine keeps that from happening. Basically, it will keep your screen from going into that lock mode. So two very cool things. And I know you guys were talking about desktop wallpapers and everything else, but it kind of flows into the whole thing of Ike, of an OS that just gets out of your way. And that's kind of what you feel when you get into it, even on the Ubuntu Budgie side, is that just getting out of your way thing. And it was gorgeous.
Well, the two things that stand out the most about it is it's beautiful and the defaults are awesome.
Yep.
Okay. I still personally prefer a full screen menu in like what GNOME has. I really do. I mean, even when I ran KDE, I would always run the full screen launcher. Okay. Wow. It was the first thing that I did when I installed KDE was to switch the launcher from the default one.
Now, I'm not trolling. I got an honest question for you.
Go ahead.
Okay, so in Windows 8, I think it was, or even in, I don't know if they have it still in 10, but you know how they had the full screen launcher? Did you like that?
I was the only guy, the one and only guy that liked that.
Did you really?
Everybody else hated it.
You really liked it, though?
I did. I liked the full screen launcher.
That's interesting. Okay.
It depends how it's implemented.
I mean, I'm not saying it was implemented correctly with Windows 8.
Sure, but you like the idea of
the idea of having a full screen launcher is awesome.
Okay.
So, but again, going back to Budgie, like I said, beautiful, and the defaults are awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really just a question of preferences. And as long as you can customize it to whatever suits your needs, you're good. Like, for example, the way I use Budgie is like I get rid of Plank. I assign keyboard shortcuts to my browser, mail, client, and terminal. I almost never go into the menus, or I use the run dialog for anything I don't use. And that's just my use case. Like I tend to, the desktop's just a means to launch an application for me. And I'm not even like notifications and stuff other than that. Like I don't really look at them other than the pop-up ones. Like I know Raven's got like some great notification systems in there, but I almost never go into Raven, and everybody just works a little bit differently. And I think the real thing is as long as your specific desktop does what you want, then you're good, whatever it is. Do you have
anything other than Budgie that you play with? Do you distro hop?
I have some test machines. But even on then, I tend to put Solus a fair amount just to kind of keep an eye on what they're doing. And some people will be like, well, what good is that? Because it's the same desktop. That's true. But, like just sane defaults and things like that. And I respect what they're doing. Once in a while, I don't really distro hop. I more so will just put alternative desktops on. So I tend to just kind of run across the flavors just because my base is Ubuntu, because that's just where I'm working. So I put Mate on here and there. I mean, I love what Martin's doing. He's got a lot of great stuff, especially in 1710. So I like to watch what he's up to because it's good. I don't really tend to go outside of the ecosystem a lot, not because it's not interesting. I mean, there's a lot of great stuff happening everywhere. It's just my use case. I find I've got too many interests, so I have to whittle them down a little bit. And that's probably my biggest fault, is that I'm like, oh, squirrel. And then I'm looking over there, and then I'm should be looking back over there. It's like a personal Kansas City shuffle,
Well, I think you make a good point. I mean, a lot of people say, well, it's XFCE, or it's GNOME, or it's Budgie. And that's not the case. If the other day I put Manjaro XFCE on the new AMD Ryzen build I did, and it's a completely different experience than Ubuntu XFCE. Completely different. The defaults, the menu, color schemes, it feels different. It's all different. It's not necessarily better or worse, but there are just different defaults and setups there that make it a completely different experience when you first go into it. So someone may have used XFC in the past, or GNOME or Budgie in a different environment and not liked it, but would like it in another distro environment, which I think is very interesting. I don't hear a lot of people talk about.
Well, I think that's why people end up where they end up, is because of the implementation, not necessarily the desktop. Like if I look at things like KDE and GNOME, so before I was using Budgie, I was like a Windows, like an i3 user. So I was tiling manager, and there's no sane default there. You got to set it up. Yep. But before that, I was almost always GNOME 3. And I would always dip in with KDE, check it out, come back out. But I found that the experience was super, super different depending on which distro you went with. Like if you were, if you went raw Arch, well, then you're pretty much setting it up exactly the way you want it. If you go with something like Antergos, or however you want to pronounce it, because I'm probably saying it wrong, their implementation is drastically different. So long as, someone has same defaults and people find it and you tend to appeal to their, I don't want to call it like-mindedness, but you just hit the same defaults and they're happy, then you're going to keep them. And I think that's what keeps people there, is what and how you configure it, not even necessarily how the desktop is.
Yep. So with Ubuntu Budgie 17.10, you've gone through a lot of the features that have happened. What's your favorite change you've seen in this update?
In this one?
Yeah.
Well, like I was saying, 10.4 by default.
Okay.
Because there were a lot of almost things that I feel were a necessity for like the base portion of the desktop. Like not even talking applets, not talking about any of that, just like base functionality, like pre 10.4. Like you look at the older versions, like in the 10.3 series, and the alt tab functionality, like it was pretty raw at the time, right? And that was one of the reasons why just before 10.4 and all that stuff, like Ike literally put a bounty out to get that work done, because he realized that, it needed some work, and he got that work done by a community member just to get a working thing. And it was just one of those base functionalities that I would say a lot of people expect, like you don't want to have to load a desktop and go try to use something basic like alt tab. Like, let's face it, like that's in every OS,
right.
Any GUI OS. And if it's not working or not a sane implementation, you're going to look at it and kind of go, this kind of reflects the rest of the desktop, and that leaves not a bad taste, but it might leave a perception that isn't necessarily true of the underlying system or architecture. So
now, do you guys get any reports that tell you this is how many people are downloading Ubuntu Budgie? This is its popularity. I mean, I'm sure you can't give out those numbers, but do you see since 17.10 it's going up, it's going down,
Yes.
It's staying flat?
No, it went up. Absolutely went up. So with 17.10, as I mentioned, we had better community involvement, but now like our community room has become much more active since the 17.10 release, which is great. That means hopefully we're growing on some level, like we're still relatively small, but people are coming in, people are asking questions. Fortunately, a lot of the conversations we had are just more questions on how to do things, not so much on like, oh, I've got this bug. And so, I mean, there are aspects of that, but it's more of like, how do I do this? So what does that say to me? Well, we should probably improve our documentation, or at least have the documentation repos somewhere, like just for the basics. Now, we have had that discussion, and it is something that we need to do, but we just haven't sort of implemented that yet. So, yeah, but that's good. We're growing.
I think it's hard to break into the desktop environment area anyway, or into a distro area, because there's so many out there. And I think that when people try Ubuntu Budgie, like I said, there's so many out there to try, including Solus. So if people would try Ubuntu Budgie, they would see the same things that me and Ryan saw when we first booted into it, how beautiful it is. Right. And I think people, you don't get that because like they're too busy trying all of these other, big names.
Right.
And it's hard to break into that area. But seriously, let me ask you a question. Have any of you three or two have run into anybody that's tried Ubuntu Budgie and said, I don't like that?
If I've seen people say that, it's one of two things. Either they like a very specific set of functionality that another distro offers. Like, for example, let's say the brisk menu in Mate. Right. Like the brisk menu is great. Like I wish the Budgie desktop had the brisk menu, but it doesn't. So you'll get people who will come in, they'll try out Budgie, they'll like really like it, and they'll be like, oh, well, I just kind of don't like the way the menu works, so I'm going to go back. Or I'm going to go over here because, I want a rolling distro or something like that. So that's
but wanting a rolling distro is probably different than not liking Budgie. You know what I mean?
True,
like,
very true, very true.
So.
I just mean that there's something another distro fulfills in what they want.
Right.
Whether, you're correct, like a rolling distro versus Budgie, you're absolutely correct. That's probably not a great comparison, but just more my point is there might be a feature of another flavor distro desktop that just doesn't quite fit their workflow, and then that's when you'll get them jumping back. I think there's never been like any outright like, oh, Budgie sucks.
Yeah,
you know?
well, that's that's why I brought it up, because I don't hear people say that. Everybody that tries it, we're like, wow, you know, that's usually their reaction to it. And I think if there was one chink in the armor of Budgie, it would probably be the menu itself.
Yeah.
So
I agree. I absolutely agree. And I think also a lot of it too is Budgie is still relatively small outside of Solus and Ubuntu Budgie, right? Like, so if you go looking like at the news articles and everything that's coming up for Linux or even Ubuntu, like we're relatively not in the news a ton.
Right.
But the other day, for the first time, I don't know why I never thought of this. I just went searching, like, say, Twitter based on hashtags and stuff. And then I was going through what people were writing, and I was kind of like, oh, okay, people are liking this. I just don't hear about it because maybe I'm looking in the wrong spot, or maybe because we don't have a lot of media coverage or anything. Like, probably most of the media coverage that we've gotten consistently is probably you guys are one of the biggest supporters. OMG Ubuntu, like Joey's done, you know, he covers our stuff here and there, you know, he's open to it. But I mean, outside of that, you'll occasionally see some of the other media outlets cover it. And then a lot of the times the information's a little skewed. It's not so bad as it used to be, like even like 6 months ago, but there was always like a lot of confusion between or behind like how things were structured, and, you know, the relationship between, like, say, Solus, the Budgie desktop, Ubuntu, and, you know, how it all sort of relates. And I get it, because there's such a small, it's kind of a small family in a weird way. You know what I mean? Like, they're all related, but not directly. And then the funny thing is like, people are or can install Budgie on other systems, but you don't hear a lot about it yet. You know, like you could go run it. I mean, Budgie's in Debian. Like, David packages it into Debian, and then we bring it down in, like, so we're not just packaging for Ubuntu. It's actually upstream, further up in Debian. So you could put it in there if you wanted.
Well, I suggest everybody at least try Ubuntu Budgie once. Okay, even if you don't end up liking it, at least try it, because it's definitely worth the try.
Yeah. We're not just saying it for Dustin, even though we kind of like him.
Yeah, well,
sort of,
Dustin's okay, but
he's all right. But honestly,
he's overrated.
Yeah, honestly, when we tried it, I wanted to get Rocco's theme or Rocco's, you know, feelings on that, because that's kind of the first thing I thought is, my gosh, this thing is gorgeous. And
wait, did you put on transparency?
Did I?
No, Brian, did you put on the transparency? Oh my gosh, dude, you said it's beautiful. Then go into the panels and turn on transparency on, well, I added the 2 panels, but go in and turn transparency on. It is absolutely gorgeous, dude.
Yeah, nice.
My setup lately is, I'm really happy with, is I think I sent you guys screenshots, but it's mostly black. And then down at the bottom, I just went dock mode with just centered on the bottom, and it's just all nice white crisp icons with transparency, and they're just nice and small and out of my way.
That's kind of what I had to do with GNOME, because I didn't like that splash one. I went full dock mode. But Dustin, clearly you have no idea what you're talking about when it comes to Budgie. So but we appreciate you very much giving us that insight into it, because it is really, Ubuntu Budgie is an amazing experience. So go check it out. Some other things we could pick your brain with here are snaps. So, you know, LibreOffice and Chromium, not Chrome, Rocco.
I don't know what you're talking about.
They have some snaps that are available now for testing. Why does this matter? Why do we care? I could get Chromium, I could get LibreOffice any other way from the software stores or through the terminal. Why do I care?
Why do you care? Well, modern versions is one of the big selling features. I mean, the confinement's one of my favorite aspects. Like, even when trying out software, you drop it onto your system and you pull in a lot of dependencies through the traditional app installations, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But if you're just one of those people that likes to drop something on quickly, have a look at it, check it out, and then you want to nuke it and you want to keep your system clean, well, it's all essentially containerized through snaps and with your dependency and everything. So you can just rip them back out. So you can test, you can get the latest versions. The confinement's proper from a security point of view. Like there's lots of great sort of stories behind that, even above and beyond the cross distro stuff. Like the cross distro stuff is a huge part of the story, but it's not the only part of the story. So I would say those are probably some of the bigger reasons. I personally find them easier to package up, but that's also pretty subjective. Like you get anyone into this conversation about universal packaging or even just packaging in general, and you're going to have people that are kind of fans of any one technology, and they're going to be inherently against the other ones, which is fine. Everybody's got their own opinions. You use what works for you in your setup, but I like snaps a lot.
So in the software store, are we going to see snaps and the standard software store implementations in the store at the same time? So
it's already like that.
Chromium. Is that ever going to get cleaned up?
Oh, I imagine so on some capacity. I'd say there's probably some UI things that could happen in the store apps themselves. Like, maybe, like I'm just speculating here, maybe in the future, there'll be a setting that says give priority to, you know what I mean? And then just don't show duplicates. Like that might be a UI thing that could happen. So if you prefer snaps, you could go ahead and set that setting. That's what I would do anyways, not that
It's one of the most annoying things right now in Ubuntu software store is the duplications. And some of them don't work anymore. So you'll go to one that, and you'll use it and it doesn't do anything. Then you go to the next one and it works. And honestly, it kind of reminds me of, Yart, if you will, in the Arch where you've just got 15 choices of the compiled package that you can choose from, and you keep going through to find one that works, especially when you're
or the right one from the right developer. You don't want to just go for any package. Anybody can package up the program, so you want to get the one that's directly from the developer. So I totally agree.
On the AUR, you have popularity. There's not really a great rating system, meaning it's not utilized heavily in a lot of cases in the Ubuntu software store, where you can tell, oh, this one's got 500 people that download it. Like I'm more interested in knowing, and somebody mentioned this, I think, for Android App Store, which I thought was a great idea. People can kind of cheat the stars and have people
game it a bit.
They can game it a little bit, but one of the things they were suggesting for like Android was to not only show how many people have installed it, but how many people have kept it installed, on average. So it's not something where people just download it and then they're like, oh, this is not what I want, remove.
Right.
And then
it's a good metric, but then I wonder how many people are going to start crying creepy. You know what I mean? Because that means it's obviously pulling additional info from your handset to know that it's still installed. So you're going to have people I find it an interesting metric, but you're going to have a lot of people that aren't going to like that. And to add further to your sort of context of which one to install. So there's been a lot of discussion, or maybe not a lot, but there's some discussion on the Snapcrafters forum about multiple versions. Because if you just go and do, let's just say you go snap search Telegram from the command line, there are multiple Telegram results. And then, of course, you can go pick the newest one, that indicates that it's, being maintained, but there are multiple Telegram options in there. So until you know sort of which one to install, there might be some confusion for newer users. So there's the concept of, I don't want to say verified, like that's part of the discussion is like, should it be a verified developer? Because it's not always like with snaps, it's not always upstream that's packaging it. It could be anyone. Like there's like Martin and them, they started the Snapcrafters group, which is another organization on GitHub where, a lot of people are part of that team, and they'll start snapping things up. And then once it's in a working state, they'll transfer it over to the Snapcrafters organization, which is, I think it's a good thing because then when you look at your search results, you can see that the organization is Snapcrafters or Canonical. And over time, you'll get an idea of who to trust. And, but it's like anything. You have the same problem in Debian packaging. Like if you go add an apt repository, do you trust that person? That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people are looking at snaps and saying, well, okay, who do you trust? But the same thing still applies. There needs to be a way to verify or validate where you should be. The store
just seems so broken right now that honestly, I'm doing everything through the terminal. I don't even want to touch the store. And I install a lot of apps. Like I have a list on my website of all the apps I install when I do new distro, and it's long. list of stuff that I like to have, but it was very frustrating getting a lot of that software through the store because there were just so many confusing options that I just ended up going in a lot of cases and getting it through the terminal because it was just easier to navigate than the software store.
Well, that's what I do. I mean, because the problem with the software store is, well, what front end are you using? Are you using GNOME software? Some people are starting to go over to use the new elementary offering. Was it someone just started put their own skin on it? I can't remember. I heard on one of the other podcasts. So it really depends on what you're using. And
wait, there are other podcasts?
You don't just listen to
I don't know what you're talking
Kick him
about.
off the show, Rocco, right now. Loyal listeners only.
I didn't say I wasn't listening. So it depends on the what sort of like how each distro or flavor is implementing. Like, what are they using for the front end? And I think there's a lot of debate there. Like, I know, for example, in 1804, like we are looking at what we could use. Like, we are considering replacing GNOME software. Like one of our guys, Nicola, like he's looking at that. We are looking at things like even the theming, for the next version. Like it's like, how do you want to implement it? Like that all comes back to implementation details.
I have no doubt Canonical is going to fix it all, and it will be the best software store in the next few months than anybody's ever seen, and it will work perfectly. Hopefully. And the good news is because Canonical has joined the GNOME Foundation Advisory Board to help make sure that happens. Right, Rocco?
That's right. So this just came out this week. So they decided to join along with GNOME to be on the advisory board. So the question is, now they have complete control of GNOME, right, Dustin?
No.
Okay.
Advisory.
Oh, okay.
Welcome to our new overlord.
So what exactly is the advisory board for people that don't know?
Well, my understanding of it is it's more of like a conglomerate of people have similar interests in GNOME itself, right? But you'll have a bunch of different companies sort of coming in and either offering, for some people it might be opinions, some might be in a consulting sort of capacity because maybe they have experience in certain different technical aspects. They all may have an interest in it. Like it's literally just that, an advisory board. It's to, as a group, try to drive things hopefully in the right direction.
So other members of the board include Google, the Document Foundation, Red Hat, and SUSE. So I guess Canonical goes alongside of them. So how much say do they really have then over everything? I mean, I know it's just an advisory board, but how much pull do they have? Especially being it's in their operating system now.
Well, yeah, but it's also in everybody else's operating system. Like Red Hat ships GNOME by default. So to be honest, I don't understand how they weight those sort of things. Like maybe it's based on different like levels of maybe funding and things like that. But the reality is, or my understanding is no one entity has more say than others. Now, you could argue that, someone who's as big as Canonical or Red Hat is going to have more sway than, say, a smaller entity.
I did see a behind-the-scenes picture into one of the meetings, their first meetings, and there was this big booth that was risen above all the other tables with Canonical on it. And then there was this emperor with a red cape.
Wait. So what you're saying is
this up a little bit.
So what you're saying is that Canonical would have more pull than, say, if I was on the advisory board.
That's a possibility.
Your hair's too awesome, man. There's no way.
All right. So what do we got next?
Guess what, Rocco?
What? Tell me.
You can now install KDE Plasma 5.11.2 desktop and Latte dock on Kubuntu 17.10. Now, through all of this Ubuntu jumping we've been doing, have you played with Kubuntu? Is that how you pronounce it, or is it like Zeus or something?
No.
You never know.
It's totally Kubuntu.
Okay. Cool.
But I have not had a chance to. I have the ISO downloaded on my machine. I just have not had time to play with it. But having the latest KDE is always sometimes exciting, sometimes scary. Depends on how you look at it. But it ships with 5.10.5 as the default. You add the PPA, and you're up to 5.11.2, which is the latest. So,
and you also get the new Latte dock and Krita 3.3.1. Krita is an amazing art program. I think I've told you about it before, Rocco. I don't know if you had a chance to play with it yet, but anybody can become an artist with that awesome tool. And also there's a lot of drawing pads like the Bamboo and other professional pads that work with Linux. So it's a very cool tool. Having the latest one obviously helps. So definitely neat to see them coming up. I did install the KDE desktop through the terminal to kind of play with the Kubuntu desktop within, I think my ISO default installation was the XFCE. And, you know, it's KDE. There's nothing wrong with it. It's awesome. So,
do you guys tend to go towards Kubuntu or towards Neon? If you guys were running for yourself, I'm curious.
not played with Neon, so it would be Kubuntu with me.
Well, I always tended to gravitate towards Neon.
Mm-hmm.
The last time I tried Neon wasn't exactly and that probably was due to it's all due to timing on what point release it is for KDE. If it's an early point release, it may not be as stable as like the 0.5s.
Mm-hmm.
But I usually gravitate to Neon. So I haven't tried Kubuntu in a long time.
Just for the new hotness?
I'm going to have to try. Like I said, I got the ISO downloaded. I just haven't had time to play with it. So.
What happened with your XFCE install, Rocco?
It's there.
We never followed up with it. And
I don't know what you're talking about. It may not be there.
Are you using it right now?
No, I'm not.
Liar.
I'm using it. But did I tell you that I installed Ubuntu on the laptop?
You did?
I did.
And you're kind of falling in love, aren't you?
Did I tell you I installed the Ubuntu on the laptop?
You will later.
He loves the installer.
Yeah. Revamped Skype desktop app has been released. Dustin, you want to tell us about this? I know you're a big Windows fan.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So my understanding is this is the first stable release since they rewrote it using Electron. I know the code base is they're going across the board for all the OSs now, which is, I don't know, I think it's a good thing because we get included. Instead of having those weird incompatibilities between Linux and the rest of the world. So I think it's a good thing. And the reality is if you look at other Electron apps that Microsoft has written, like VS Code, like I know people aren't fans of Microsoft and that's cool, but VS Code is actually one of the best Electron apps I've ever used as far as performance.
I didn't realize I was using Electron tools until Noah was talking about Electron on our show last week. And Simple Note and I think Discord are Electron apps.
Yeah. So Slack,
awesome apps.
Yeah, like most of your desktop apps are probably Electron. So just the fact that they have a history of writing well-architected Electron apps. I know some people might say that's impossible. But the reality is if anyone, I would trust them to do that. And considering that this is like audio, video, and all that kind of stuff, it has to be written well. And I threw it on yesterday now that it's stable. I'd gone early alphas and stuff, and it just wasn't usable at the time. But I've used it over the last couple of days just to sort of test it out for the show. And I mean, honestly, I see zero issues with it. I mean, you're going to either love or hate the interface, I find, right? Because that was a pretty big revamp, but it seems to be fine. They're trying to push the bots into that. I don't know whether they're talking bots for fun or bots for, more of the chat ops, DevOps stuff, which I really don't, because I don't know anyone who's going to probably use it for that. But really no complaints with it. I see no difference in it from the old version other than the fact it actually works.
Actually works. That's a good thing, I hope.
So far. I mean, granted, I haven't used it a ton, but, it seems to be just fine, like no complaints.
Well, apparently it has working screen sharing from or to Windows, Mac, and Linux. So
there you go.
That's a good
code
feature.
base.
So I could be on Linux and Ryan could be on Windows and we could share screens, right?
That would never happen. I think the opposite of that maybe, but maybe. No.
That's why I said it.
Listen, Rocco. Let me ask you something. If you took Zen and you smashed it together with Vega, what would you have?
Mobile?
You would have AMD dominating the mobile market. That's right. How did you know that? You're so smart.
Not really. I just read it off the key card here.
AMD is back from the dead and they are ready to conquer the mobile market. And let me tell you something. After doing a Ryzen build, I am unbelievably impressed with, I got the lowest end Ryzen you can get, literally the Ryzen i 1200, and it's it's just so powerful for a little chip. Well, they're going to take all the power of the Ryzen 5 and the Ryzen 7. It's going to be the Ryzen 5 2500U and the Ryzen 7 2700U. And they're going to smash that in with their Vega GPU, and they're going to create mobile processors for laptops. So now, for the first time ever in history, you're actually going to be able to buy an AMD laptop and not be ashamed of it.
Wow.
That AMD sticker off of it anymore. It's not going to be overheating. You're not going to be using it as a furnace because the Ryzen is so cool. If they keep with the same architecture that they have currently on their desktop, even the processor stays incredibly cool. And that's a first for an AMD. I've had the bulldozers and things before, and they were just so incredibly hot. You could actually feel it burning against my leg in the past. But now these new AMD chips, they're incredible, as everybody's knowing. So you're going to get that beauty of these two chips combined. Now, the Ryzen 5 is 2 to 3.6 gigahertz. And if you get the 7, you get to boost another 200 megahertz in there. But what's really incredible is comparing this chip against Intel here, Intel's mobile line of CPUs. They're claiming in their advertisement 200% more performance than a 7th generation Intel on the CPU and 128% better GPU performance. How do you like them apples, Intel? What do you think, Rocco?
Well, we're going to have to ask our friend Michael Larabelle to benchmark it for us and let us know, huh?
There you go.
I don't know, dude. I've said before, I've always had a bad vibe about AMD.
You have one bad experience, and now you hate all AMD.
No, look, we've covered the Ryzen launch, and it's exciting to see the competition come to Intel because it'll make Intel work harder. Okay, and if the chips work as well as they're advertised as, I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to building a system, I'm kind of still in the back of my head. I have that leery feeling, and I don't want to jump in head first. Hopefully, the more they keep going and they keep implementing all these new features, then maybe that'll change.
Well, I think this is exciting. Number one is I'm seeing some, the whole market's kind of getting thrown around when it comes to GPUs and things because of the whole Bitcoin mining thing. But I'm starting to see some prices drop on the Vega, which I'm very interested in. Now, the Vega hasn't had the same performance comparisons of completely destroying the NVIDIA 1070s or 1080s, but it's certainly up there with its performance. And there's some great stats depending on what game you're playing and what you're doing. But this is very important for AMD because it puts them directly in Intel's face in the mobile market, which is a huge market in the computer world, is getting to those laptops. Most people, consumers, are going out there and they're buying laptops. They're not building their own desktops. So I think that's where most of your sales are going to be. Having a good mobile offering there is going to be fantastic for them. And I think they're going to do very, very well because for the first time, they have a very low wattage CPU in there that would make sense to mobilize it. So I think they're going to do awesome.
Well, I hope so. But one thing I'm sick to death about hearing.
What's that? About XFCE?
No, actually, I like hearing about XFCE, but the YouTube adpocalypse. I'm so sick and tired of hearing about it all the time, every day. And I don't know. What do you think, dude? Let's talk about it for a second.
Well, YouTube, you guys were talking about this on some of your Saturday Night Live episodes. In fact, I think we had a whole Friday Night Live back then episode where we just went down the whole, because you have a lot of content creators on your show. And we went down the whole, gamut of what YouTube's done. And the two sides of the coin where some people are basically saying YouTube's gone too far. They're trying to stop our freedom of speech. And the other side saying, yeah, they went too far, but they had to do a nuclear option to basically save any of their potential ad revenue out there. So those were kind of the two sides I think it fell on at the end. Recently, I had a few videos that were flagged for the first time because while you guys were having these conversations, and I think I've got a lot of videos out there, I didn't have any flagged. But recently, there were some that got flagged probably a month or so ago. And it was for video games that I was playing, specifically a horror game, and another one where the actual characters in the game cussed. And I assume that's why it got flagged. It doesn't really tell you. It just says partially demonetized or something like that. So, I mean, it's a pretty strict rule, right? For a video game character to cuss and then you get no money for your video because the advertisers don't want to be a part of that. So what YouTube's apparently done is they have kind of ruled out some more robust AI that is supposed to flag 30% less videos now because they have a more robust algorithm that they're using. So they used basically this algorithm plus some human reviews. They put it all together, and now we have Skynet will soon take over the world. But at the moment, it's being used to determine if your video is ad safe or not.
Do you guys feel like this is just kind of a story of them being disconnected from their customer?
I think they've been disconnected from their customer for a long time, personally.
So who are they targeting? That's what I don't understand about this sort of stuff. Like, because in a traditional business, I mean, people are going to try to follow where their market goes, right? So if they're not listening to their customer, where are they getting their information from? Or is it all just in a self-servicing sort of kind of view that maybe they're rolling?
See, there were a couple companies, as I understand it, that kind of, was it Washington Post or one of those newspapers that kind of kicked off this whole, let's at least, since Rocco's playing horns while I'm talking about YouTube, at least go into the one thing that Zeb brought up, Rocco, our producer, our well-paid rich producer, Zeb.
So, Zeb, you have your own YouTube channel, and you recently had some issues with a live stream incident with OBS. So tell us about it.
Okay. Well, I was just doing a normal distro hop, hepatitis syndrome, and the first time you install OBS Studio, it gives you the option to run a wizard. And this allows it to pick the optimum settings for your OS and your bandwidth and all the rest of it and set it up automatically so you don't have to go in and choose bitrate and NVENC or whatever. Now, this produces a 13-second grey, ghosty nothing video that gets uploaded to YouTube. Literally 10 seconds after that's finished, I go on and I delete the video. And I've done it hundreds of times in the last year. About 2 minutes later, I get notified that I've had a community strike against my channel. I can't appeal it because I've now deleted the video that caused the strike. And I'm now banned from live streaming for 90 days.
90 days.
That does seem a little bit excessive. And it's also happened to another YouTuber that you guys may know, a gentleman called Pseudo Reboots.
Yeah.
Yep.
He also got banned for exactly the same thing. Now, while you guys have been chatting, I've jumped on the OBS forum and tried to advise them that this is happening. And someone said, yeah, thanks very much indeed. But if you'd have read the auto-config warning, we told you to set it to private. I can't find that. Somebody else jumped on and said, oh, well, it's all part of YouTube's terms and conditions. Now, if any YouTuber has read those 30,000 words that are in the terms and conditions.
Everybody reads the terms and conditions, dude. Don't you know that?
Yeah. And again, I've just spent 20 minutes trying to find test stream, private. I can't find a thing. So it seems a bit harsh that it's buried somewhere that you cannot do a test stream. And it just seems a bit strange that if you're meant to be in private mode, why don't OBS help their users out and say, stop, is YouTube in private mode?
I still don't quite understand why it's doing that, though. Like, I don't understand.
Why would it even matter?
Yeah, what is the problem that would even matter?
Well, I can tell you that in OBS, when you first do that install, it gives you two options. Do you want to optimize your system for recording locally, or do you want to optimize your system for streaming? So I know on the recording locally, you can do that and you'll be fine. When I have done the optimize for streaming, because I'm more interested in recording, so I've always done that. But just so happens the other day I said optimize for streaming. It asked for my key, and I just randomly typed in a bunch of stuff because I wanted to get past it, and I didn't want to look up my key. And I'm so glad I did that before I heard this message, because otherwise I'd be banned for 90 days too. I'm sure there's something they're trying to stop from people from DDoSing them or something with videos that they're popping up and taking down. I don't know, but really stupid. And it's kind of falls into, YouTube having a very trigger happy methodology. And I'm sure there are reasons for it, but not a great way to get support from them to fix those type of situations. And because they have so many people who utilize the platform, it's probably very hard for them to have a support system because they already don't make a lot of money off of YouTube for it, but it just kind of stinks all the way around.
Yeah. You guys must be the first ones using OBS on YouTube, hey?
Yeah.
Yeah, and we know they've got 300 hours of videos every minute going onto the channel, but it must be something that they have just introduced because, as I say, I must have produced 100 of these test streams. I know Sudo's done exactly the same thing. Any YouTuber who wants to discuss a new distribution would have automatically gone through this process. And there's another gentleman out there called Clatterford Slim. He's still got about 10 of these videos on his YouTube channel, but has never been struck off. So just a little warning to fellow YouTubers out there. Don't use the automatic YouTube facility, not YouTube facility, but OBS facility, unless you set your stream to private first.
Nice. Well, Rocco is going to reach out to the Google CEO tomorrow and get a direct answer for you, Zeb.
Wow.
He's going to demand it.
I have that much pull? Okay.
No.
It's there.
Thank you, Zeb.
You, Zeb, for that. That's actually really important for people to know because getting banned is a big deal, especially a 90-day ban. It's not like it's a 9-day or a 5-day. It's a big deal. So that's our new producer, everyone. Round of applause.
Awesome.
All right. So moving on, Firefox to get a better password manager. Was the one they have bad?
I don't know. Is the one they have? Of course it was bad, dude. Nobody who uses the Fireworks built-in password manager.
Who uses any browser's built-in password manager? Raise your hand. Dustin. Okay, good.
Okay, so it's a great idea to build a better password manager, but really, are there people who are going to trust this?
I guess at some point you're trusting somebody with your passwords, like a LastPass in some cases. Maybe you use KeyPass or something like that. But either way, you're making, unless you wrote your own, you're doing some trusting around there, right?
I guess.
Well, you just described open source. Like, think about what you're installing on your systems. Think about where you're storing your passwords. Like, you have to make that decision on, do I feel good installing this? Do I feel good using this? And especially when there's new things popping up all the time. Software password managers, like there's that new one, Bitwarden, that's coming out. That seems to be a viable LastPass alternative. So do you trust them? Do you trust Mozilla? Like, where do you go? That's kind of almost a personal decision combined with a little bit of common sense.
Your password manager, you don't have to say what you use, but do any of you pay for it?
Yes.
I don't pay for it right now. I have in the past. I use NPass for managing passwords because it works.
His main password's Monkey1, by the way.
Monkey1 is my main password. That's right. But
Ryan.
NPass works on Windows, Linux, and mobile, and it's free to use. So there is a paid version of it, but I think it has more to do with mobile than anything.
Nice.
That seems to be the common thing with these password managers, is where you can kind of get in for free, and then if you want to have either syncing across the platforms or a mobile client, they just charge you for the mobile client, which, in my opinion, that's fine.
Password manager is kind of mandatory at this point to have. Which one you choose is up to you. Certainly, you could use the browser versions if that's what you want. Don't know the trustworthiness of any of them, so there you go. This extension will improve the UI and perhaps some security too. It's kind of in testing now. It's really meant for the employees. They're going to call it Lockbox to kind of test and play with it, or their internal development teams. But you can play with it too. You can go download the alpha, put all of your most secret passwords in it, and then test and see how secure it is.
But I thought it was employee only.
Yeah, you don't have to be an employee because they're just that open source.
Wow.
Yeah.
They're that
good. Just send me your social insurance number, your mother's maiden name, and I'll keep it safe for you. You can trust me.
All right, so there's more news about Firefox. So they've been in the news a lot lately. Not always good, but they are implementing another privacy, as they quote it, privacy-preserving feature. And it's taken from the Tor browser. So canvas fingerprinting. What do you think?
Well, this is really interesting. So what happens is, if you're blocking certain elements from sites and trying to keep yourself private. Well, they're finding ways to kind of assign it sounds like an advertising ID to you by utilizing some of the code that web developers create to go out and grab ads from a single source and basically pull those ads into your website. I think through iframes is how they're doing it. And they're using that code essentially to basically tell your browser, instead of doing that, we're going to use that iframe to kind of paint a random picture. And that random picture now becomes Rocco. They assign that to basically, they don't know it's you, but that picture now comes associated with you. So they start learning your habits and things that you're doing. And to them, let's say your picture is a circle. So everywhere you go, they kind of know this is, you go to this site, then you go to this site, then you like to do this, and you're that circle. Now, eventually they may pick up, because you also log into your Facebook account, that you are indeed Rocco, and Rocco now gets associated with this circle. So that sounds like how it's kind of going, and I'm sure somebody who's a web developer can make some more sense of that. But essentially, that's the gist of the whole using the canvas feature within your browser. Now, Firefox is going to allow you to block this. So instead of allowing that canvas to start drawing through that iframe, it's going to have a pop-up and say, hey, they want to do this. They're trying to do this. Do you want to allow it? And you can say no and move on.
So what you're saying is Firefox is saying they will allow you to turn off this feature of of advertising or blocking advertising or blocking tracking, except for when they do it in the Mozilla add-on store, or except when they slide it in the back door of a...
Listen, you Chrome lover. Nobody asked you about security. They don't even have to draw it in an iframe for Rocco. He literally just sends them an act. They just take a literal picture of you with your webcam in Chrome. And
I have a microphone. They're Google. Yeah. They can hear everything, dude. That's the way it is.
What do you think, Dustin?
Just use Brave.
There you go. That's a great idea.
All right. So Kaspersky. Mm-hmm. Is that how you say it? Kaspersky?
Kaspersky.
I don't speak Russian. It's a Russian thing. Good news about Kaspersky. They've been in the news a couple times. They've been falsely accused of many different things. They recently uploaded U.S. documents to some Moscow servers, but Rocco quit freaking out. They quickly deleted them.
Of course they did, dude.
All those F-22 and F-35 secret documents have been deleted, and we don't know what they were, but apparently Kaspersky does some scraping, I guess, and maybe they're doing some scraping on the internet to kind of figure out what's going on out there to build virus databases, and it sounds like they scraped some classified documents.
Well, we covered this article last week, I believe it was, about them actually getting this information, but this is the follow-up article to it to say, yeah, there's nothing to worry about. We deleted it all. So it's all good. Yeah. This is their side of the story to say, wow, we did find that stuff, but we got rid of it right away.
Because they put the NSA employees apparently can put whatever they want on their computers.
Yeah, like we said, like there's
literally no IT recommendations or rules or anything. Download whatever you want.
Yeah, just put on whatever you want. It's all good.
If I delete all my internet profiles, does that mean they're gone forever?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, the NSA just responded yes.
Thank you, sir.
Google did as well, just so you know.
Yeah. They said you're good. Don't worry about it.
All right, so what do we got next?
You've given me a bunch of stuff to worry about. Don't tell me about anything else I need to worry about.
All right, let's jump down to 3D printers. I'm not a big 3D printer guy, but you have messed around with them. So what's the news on this?
I built a 3D printer from scratch, and honestly, I'm going to tell you, it was one of the most painful experiences of my tech building life.
Really?
It is literally was later put into a box and shipped to somebody else who bought it on eBay, and good luck to them.
Wow.
This 3D printer, it's obviously a very much an emerging technology, and there are situations. My wife bought this for me. It was an amazing gift. It was, a $200 3D printer. And unfortunately, in that price range at the moment, you're not going to get much but a kit and a bunch of kind of, parts that are mingled together that you build yourself in a really poorly written instruction manual.
Did you get this at IKEA?
It would have been worse than IKEA. It was worse than any IKEA furniture out there. I did get it to work eventually, but not without the nozzle clogging up every 5 seconds and everything else. But the drivers and everything loaded perfectly fine. One of the issues that you'll run into when you start looking into the higher end 3D printers is a lot of them do not advertise working for Linux. Now, the workaround with that with 3D printers is most of them allow you to print directly from source, meaning you basically take your 3D printed image, you put it on a memory card, you put it in the 3D printer and it prints. You don't need to have a direct interface with your computer, but it's nice as you get more and more into those to be able to, directly interact and print without having to remove a memory card and put it into the printer. So with that being said, there is a new 3D printer out there on the market called BeagleBone, which focuses on ease of use, which was music to my ears because the one I had was not easy to use.
Really? BeagleBone?
Yeah.
Isn't BeagleBone just like a system on a chipboard though?
I don't know. They call it the Volad 3D printer. Features a Linux-driven BeagleBone SBC that connects to a cloud-based.
Yeah.
So
okay, yeah, it uses a BeagleBone single board computer. Okay, that's where I was confused. I was like, wow, they didn't do their homework on their name then.
So what is BeagleBone?
It's a single board computer like a Raspberry Pi.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So the Volad 3D printer looks absolutely beautiful, unlike the printer I had, which was pieced together with a bunch of screws and plastic pieces you glued with super glue. This one actually looks professional and, just looks, it's very easy to use. They've got cartridge, basically exchange tips. One of the biggest issues with 3D printers is the nozzle clogging and all that stuff. Well, this basically uses a cartridge that has your filament inside. You plug in your cartridge, but it also has your nozzle tip, because those go bad quite easily because they get, the whole idea is it heats up very hot, the liquid pours out, and then it builds. Well, this cartridge, it looks like, based on the pictures, actually comes with the nozzle tip built into the cartridge. So you basically slam the cartridge in, print what you want. Once that cartridge is out, you flip it out, put a new one in. It sounds awesome. It looks awesome. So you can get involved with this Kickstarter there. And of course, it supports Linux. So you can't beat that and not have the horrible experience that I had. This 3D printer, you can get your hands on it for a reasonably priced $599, meaning Rocco will probably have one tomorrow, right?
Right.
All right. What else do we have in the news, Rocco?
So have you ever wanted to be a robot or operate a manned robot?
Did I ever want to be a robot?
Bionic Man.
I want to be Mech Warrior. I mean, I loved Mech Warrior as a kid, one of my favorite games. So the answer to that is yes.
Well, the world's first manned giant mech is on YouTube, and it's from South Korea, I believe. And these guys have put this together, and it's a video, and I'm not going to play it because I don't need to get we don't need to get it torn into taking the video down. But we'll put a link in the show notes. And if you watch this video, it's only a couple minutes long. It's a guy playing around with this giant robot. Right. But there's Linux spotted on this video. It's absolutely awesome. I think it's Ubuntu that they're running as they're working on it. You got to check it out. So
that's one of the greatest parts. The video is awesome. You get to see the robot. It's actually moving its hands. Now it still has the anchors up at the top and everything, but he's obviously programmed this to be almost like one of those sci-fi films that you see where he's taking steps inside the cockpit and it's moving and it's massive. And then he moves his fingers and this robot's moving its fingers. It's very cool. But then they cut to him programming it. And it's not Windows, folks. And it's not Mac that he's using to write this thing. So definitely go check out that video. Very cool stuff.
Yep. All right. So
don't go to the article, Rocco.
We're going to go to that article.
Don't do it.
We're going to go to that article, dude.
This article is just complete nonsense. You might as well have just picked it off from some no-name site because the person doesn't know what they're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Well, the article that that I'm referring to is an article on linuxandubuntu.com, and the title is "The 5 Most Beautiful Linux Desktop Environments." Okay, so let's see who's in this article.
Let Dustin guess who should be in the 5. Who's in the 5, Dustin?
Who's in the 5, Dustin?
You want me to say who's actually in the 5 or who I think should be in the 5?
Yeah,
Just guess. Yeah. Act like you didn't see the article beforehand.
Yeah. Act like you're not reading it right now.
All right. Well, I'm pretty sure GNOME's in there. I'm pretty sure KDE's in there.
Yep, that's 2.
I'm going to go. I think we're in there.
Yep.
Thanks, Taiki.
Okay,
Budgie.
let's make this better. Let's make this better. Give me a desktop that's not in there.
Okay. Yeah.
i3.
Correct.
i3 is not on there.
That is correct. There's another desktop environment that is not in the 5 most beautiful Linux desktops. What is that, Brian?
Brian, do you have your tissues?
Hannah Montana.
You are correct in that. But there's another one I'm thinking of.
No, I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, so let's go through them. So Budgie, and this is in no particular order, of course.
And I agree with that one. Okay,
Budgie is absolutely beautiful. Should definitely be in there. Next one would be Deepin Desktop Environment. You ever try that?
Without a doubt. Yes, I have.
Right.
Gorgeous.
Okay. GNOME 3.
Surprise.
Agreed. It definitely should be in there. KD Plasma 5.
Could definitely, no question, that one's on the top.
Pantheon from Elementary.
I mean,
definitely.
I can back that.
Definitely should be in the top 5.
XFCE, of course.
I am sorry, so sorry that XFCE is not in this 5.
Well, there's somebody who left a comment about that. Obviously, did you see the comment?
I did not.
Okay, there's a comment on the bottom of the article if you scroll down. And in the comment basically addresses this situation here perfectly. Better than I could even say it. But essentially, the author was clearly trying to bring something new.
Should I read this comment?
Go ahead. I don't remember who wrote it, but
okay. The comment is from a DOS geek. Okay, and it says, "Don't want to embarrass the author, but you accidentally left XFCE from the top of your list."
The DOS geek guy's right. It's the only comment on the whole article, too.
Look, there's all kinds of good reasons why all of those are mentioned, and we could probably go really deep into why they all should be there, but we don't. Time doesn't allow for us to go into it. But I thought it was a great article.
Yeah, it was a wonderful article. Absolutely wonderful.
All right, so let's get into gaming, dude.
You want to go gaming? Let's go gaming.
What have you been playing this week?
Sally Face.
What? Are you kidding me?
I've been playing Sally Face.
What the heck is Sally Face, dude? All
right, let me tell you something. You can make fun of Sally Face, but if you play Sally Face, you won't be making fun of it anymore. Because this is a psychological horror game made by Steve Gabry, a dark adventure about a boy with a prosthetic face. So very simple layout, very simple design. You don't have to get your controller out. You don't have to memorize 50 controllers. This is, different control mechanisms. This is pretty much point and click and go through the story mode. But there are some puzzle elements and item, storage and memorization and different things like that. 417 very positive reviews out there for a $2 game, Rocco. So if you're on a budget and you want an awesome game to play, a lot of people love this game. Now, I started to play it, and I'm not going to go tell all my friends I'm playing Sally Face.
Why not?
You just did.
It sounds silly. I did just tell everybody. But the game actually is very cool, and there are some very haunting kind of elements and storylines in there, and it is definitely a psychological, kind of horror game in there. So it's very cool. Played at night, turn the lights off when nobody else is home, and I think it will freak you out pretty good, especially, and I'll give this one hint, there's a brony in there. So there you go.
What?
A dude that loves My Little Pony.
That definitely is something I'm not going to play.
So if that hasn't scared you, I don't know what will. So definitely check out Sally Face. That's a game I've been playing, but I can tell you there's been a game I've been wanting to play. What is it, Rocco?
It is F1, Formula 1 2017, and it is now on Linux, so you can play it because it does have tux.
So it gets the bugs.
That's it. So this came out on November 2nd, and it is an absolutely awesome game. I went and I was on the Twitch channel for Feral Interactive I think it was Wednesday, and they did a live stream of this game playing Formula One on Linux, and they were playing it, I believe, on Ubuntu 17.10.
Nice.
And it ran flawlessly, dude. And the graphics on this game are absolutely amazing. They went through multiple tracks, multiple time frames for cars. Like they have classic cars, they have modern cars. They have element effects. They did a couple tracks in the rain, and you could barely even see. I don't know. There was three feral people there playing, and you could barely even see. So what do you think when you getting it?
Well, Codemasters, Feral Interactive have done it again, right? I mean, you talked about the graphics when you watch the videos. This is AAA all day long, right? This is the AAA game.
Definitely AAA.
About. Additionally, there are Feral Interactive on their website. So those who are like me and are now so into the idea of playing this game that you're looking for a steering wheel, Feral Interactive has steering wheel listing on their website to tell you which ones work perfectly with Linux. And there's like 7 or 8 of them that you can get out there that you can use with Linux to play this game, as well as any of the other racing games out there. Because to me, I want to buy it. It's $50, which is a big jump. I don't usually spend that anymore ever since having kids on games, but I will spend that. But I wanted the steering wheel first. So I've already made a couple offers on some used ones on eBay this morning. I'm just waiting to see if they'll accept the offers.
Or are you hinting for your wife?
Yeah, there you go.
A replacement for the printer.
Or I could 3D print myself a steering wheel. There you go.
There you go.
Not with the one I had, that's for sure. But it looks awesome. You've got career modes, multiplayer, research and development, pit stops, classic and current cars. You've got all of the different track environments. I'm not a Formula One person. I'm not going to go watch that on TV. It's not my thing. But this game is my thing, I think.
Yep.
I want to play it.
Well, one of the guys had said it's a shame that Formula One, the season will be over in 2 weeks. But I think, and I said to him, I think that may actually play into it, that people who are Formula One fans will maybe want to continue the Formula One experience and continue and start playing the game rather than just watching the series on TV.
Absolutely. So. Well, speaking of racing, Super Tux Kart update adds new tracks and characters. So I know you're a big fan of this game, Rocco.
Well, look, we're going from the extreme graphics of Formula One to
Mario Kart,
Super Tux Kart. So,
yeah, it's kind of like Mario Kart. Kind of like Mario Kart graphics in there.
Not busting on Super Tux Kart because it's a pretty decent game.
It's an icon.
It is, and there's a lot of people that love it because it started out when there wasn't many great games on Linux, but it's. Okay, Dustin, help me out here.
Help him, Dustin. Do you love Super Tux Kart?
I'm not a big fan of Super Tux Kart. I'm sorry. I'll just put that out there, okay? I'm not a big fan of it.
Send your hate mail to Rocco.
Yeah, right?
I think I've installed it once, and I think I've done a lap, and then I think I had installed it.
Look, it's nothing wrong with Super Tux Kart, okay?
No.
It's just that, like I said, when you have a choice between, like, I don't know, Shadow of Mordor, Shadow of War, or Super Tux Kart. My time is limited. I mean, like, what am I going to play? Super Tux Kart or Shadow of War? Of course I'm going to play Shadow of War. Or there's a new Windows only game coming out now that...
I'm sorry, you're breaking up. I couldn't hear that.
Yeah. There's a new war game coming out that I'm going to have to check out soon. And so Super Tux Kart may have to wait a little bit longer. But
Super Tux Kart's completely free. You can get it in the software stores. If you have a low-powered machine, certainly, too. I mean, it's a great game that you can go out there and grab. I haven't played it a lot, honestly, but I will tell you that I was introduced to it very early on in my Linux life because people were always commenting in videos like, please do a video of Super Tux Kart. So I went and checked it out, and I was like, oh, it's Mario Kart. And I love Mario Kart, but it's kind of Mario Kart with the penguin, but you got different characters, you got different classes, you can play online. And it's a very well-loved game, so I get that people love it, and I'm glad to see that it's still getting updates and some love out there. So they've got new tracks and characters, and now you can also play it on Android. So if you're an
Android, really?
Yeah, you can use your mobile phone and play Super Tux Kart, which I think is really a brilliant idea. Although you were saying you heard some of the controls aren't very good with it, Rocco. I haven't played with it
Yeah, I was talking to a couple different people, and Michael Tennell actually, I believe, said that the controls are not exactly optimum. We'll leave it at that. He didn't say that, but I'll
something like that.
Yeah, I'll translate to they're not exactly the best controls in the world because of the way you have to use them. But
it's kind of hard to play those kind of games on the mobile platform, period. So that makes sense.
Yep.
So in other news, there's this game out there that you can watch get developed. And you can watch this game get developed on Twitch. You can go to the channel and watch it. But the coolest thing is it's being developed in Linux. So this individual, City Game Studio, sandbox management game, will release next year. And it's being made right now. Well, not right now, but it's being
right
made now. And they're using Inkscape, Krita, which I'm telling you got to download and play with there, Rocco.
I should.
The Godot engine, GIMP, and they are building this game. Now, Blender actually, inside of it, has a game engine within it. So I'm not familiar with the Godot engine. I don't know if you are, Dustin, but
not at all.
I'm not sure if it's an interface with the Blender engine or its own separate engine, it sounds like, but you can make games within Blender directly. But they will be releasing this on Linux, and there's not a lot of information out there that I could find on it, but it looks to be very SimCity-esque, and you're basically doing kind of that sandbox management setup of a game. So I think it's really cool, though, that you can watch the game get developed on the Twitch channel directly, which I think makes this super cool.
Right.
Yeah, the Godot stuff is actually, it's just an open source 2D, 3D framework. So, their whole pitch is just that you're not reinventing the wheel, and, it's got the permissive MIT and all that kind of stuff. So it's just another game framework. I believe that's fully open source. So I guess that falls in the theme of developing everything on Linux, and, they're probably being pretty careful with the licensing and so on and so forth.
Very cool. So if you are interested in that, you can go check it out. I love it that this guy is doing this live on Linux as well, because it kind of builds this whole idea of you can build games in Linux. And I did a whole series with my brother as a game developer showing just that. He never used Linux, and I did a video series showing him using all the programs like Torque and Blender that he was used to within Linux. And it took him no time. He would sit down and I'd be like, all right, do 3D animation, and he could do it. It's the same. And that's what I was trying to prove. And this guy's kind of doing a little bit of the same there with Twitch, showing you can build games in Linux, and it's awesome.
Well, it is awesome to build games on Linux, but you know what's not awesome?
What's that?
When I get something wrong.
What did you get wrong?
Okay, so last week we covered Euro Truck Simulator 2, and I took an article from Gaming on Linux, and the guy from Gaming on Linux made a comment on the website to say that, hey, it's appreciate you using the article, but, that was like a couple years old. So somehow that ended up in my RSS feed. But look, I'm not perfect. I make mistakes too. So that article came through, and it was a great game to talk about. So, regardless, we covered the game. It's great. But I think this was
we're saying Euro Trucker 2's been out for 2 years?
I won't mention how long it's been out, but I'll just say this. This game is...
We covered it as a new game?
This game is just coming out.
That's great. All right, what is the new game that's just coming out? You may want to check this if you're a listener.
AER, look, I told you I'm not perfect. AER Memories. Right. It is a adventure game, and it is absolutely beautiful game. It's like a combination of maybe No Man's Sky and a little bit of Mario World, and you like turn into a falcon type animal and fly around the environment. It absolutely looks gorgeous. Unfortunately, from Steam sales and other occurring reasons, I won't be able to purchase anything right at the moment, but I would love to buy this game, dude. What do you think?
Well, it looks absolutely gorgeous. I mean, it's a very artsy game. So if you're into that kind of artsy theme, it reminded me of Zelda Breath of the Wild kind of look. And I know everybody's kind of got their own take on it, but that was my feeling when I was in there. You fly and explore, transforming to a bird at will, large open world, hidden secrets and discoveries. There's not a lot of shooting and destroying and all of that type of stuff. It looks like it's more of just kind of...
It's an adventure game.
An adventure game, yeah. A lot of aesthetics and vibrant art style, and it just looks very, very beautiful.
Nice. All right, what do we got next?
How about 5 of the best gaming mice for Linux there, Rocco?
Wow. You went there, did you?
You kind of got me with that desktop environment.
You went there, didn't you?
I kind of added one in there for me, and wanted to let you know that in this article, 5 of the best gaming mice, your mouse isn't listed there. No, nay. The manufacturer entirely isn't even listed there.
Wow. Do you see does everybody see what I have to put up with here?
But you know what was there, Rocco? The Zowie FK2 was there.
Okay. This article is a great article because it highlights a lot of gaming mice for Linux.
Yes.
Okay. But I still don't see how you put an article out of the top 5 gaming mice for Linux and you don't include Logitech. Now, I have been a very vocal person on how Logitech is crappy sometimes because it doesn't support Linux. It doesn't make a GUI for Linux to change your buttons and everything.
Right.
But in general, the mouse works great. And it does, like I got a G502. Okay. Right. And this is one of the best gaming mice, in my opinion, ever. G5 was good, but this is one of the best. And it has onboard memory, so it remembers your configurations. You just can't physically change them once they're on the onboard memory in Linux. But as far as performance and all around gaming mice, I don't know how you can at least not mention Logitech and the G502.
So you're basically saying Nick Congleton, the individual who wrote this article, probably spent months researching it, is wrong. Is that what you're saying from Make Tech Easier? That you don't like Nick's evaluation of gaming mice?
I think Nick was not informed enough about Logitech's gaming mice.
Oh, he was informed enough. He just picked real mice.
All right. So who's the top gaming mice, or is this in any particular order?
Well, it's not in any particular order, but he has the Rocat Cone XTD mouse on here. Now, he says that they doesn't support Linux, but they give us a nod.
So
what does that mean?
That pretty much puts them in the same boat as Logitech.
As everyone else, exactly. So this is interesting. They say it still works great. They work without drivers. The Zowie FK2, which is, of course, an esports favorite out there by BenQ, who also makes incredible monitors. They make the Zowie mouse, and so they don't require drivers, so they consider that very Linux.
Would love to try the Zowie.
The Razer Death Adder Elite is on there. It's considered one of the most impressive mice at the 16,000 max DPI capability there. So Razer's on here actually twice. Now they don't officially support Linux either. However, there is the Open Razer project out there. So Razer doesn't necessarily have anything to do with it, but the awesome community in Linux goes out there and creates it so that you can go change all the RGB and do all the settings you want to do with the Razer. Now, before I went to Zowie, I used Razer mice almost exclusively because they were kind of the best at the time. But because they didn't have
because you didn't try Logitech,
and I was and I was fairly new to Linux, I didn't know about this project or probably how to get to it. So I just was like, well, I want a mouse that I could just program all the hardware on. So that's how I ended up on the Zowie. And the Corsair M65, which I also own as well, which is a very good mouse.
How do you like that mouse compared to the Zowie?
The Zowie's the best mouse I've ever used.
So would you go back now that you know about the Open Razer project?
The Zowie is the best mouse I've ever used. I've never used a mouse I think that is more precise, and wherever I want to put my characters when I'm playing games, or I want to put my mouse, or wherever I want to put it, it puts it there. And
so you kicked ass at Tux Card.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I think it's probably one of the greatest mice ever made as far as weighting, comfort, and everything else. Now, this is very particular to me because I'm left-handed. So a lot of the mice out there do not work for me because they're obviously curved. And because of that, I have to have a mouse like a Zowie that doesn't have that curvature in there or try to conform to your hand. So you guys, if you're right-handed, may not have that same experience as me because the mice are more built for your hand structure in use.
Well, I would love to try the Zowie. Actually, the Corsair M65 was one I was looking at before I stuck with Logitech. And like I said, I just don't understand how Logitech is not at least honorably mentioned for being a great gaming mice. I mean, you looked up an article to research this. Tell us about that article.
Well, I looked up all the pro esports gamers, the top 13 esports gamers out there. And in the article, they do, because I was actually trying to prove a point to Rocco. And unfortunately, it didn't work out so well.
That's how it always starts.
Yeah, exactly. I was trying to prove a point to Rocco. So I looked up the top esport gamers and what mouse they use. And of course, the Zowie FK2 was on there, I think, 4 times. But the Logitech mice were on there 3 or 4 times as well. And the Razer mice were on there. So I guess we all win, Rocco. One big happy family out there. But you're correct. The Logitech does deserve a place on there. And they do make great mice. But there's no comparison.
Well, if I ever buy a Zowie, I will tell you the difference, because obviously you couldn't tell me the difference between the two or which one is better, because you don't even use Logitech.
Well, see, once you commit to the money that a Zowie costs, you're going to love it no matter what, because you kind of have to commit at that point and be like, yes, it's the greatest mouse. I just spent $150 for it. Trust me, it's the greatest mouse.
So I just found it for $78.
It'll be
there you go.
It'll be a long time before I get to try it, let me tell you.
Well, I have a Logitech where my cable's dying, so maybe I'll go buy a Zowie going from Logitech to a...
We're going to destroy those bots in CSGO from this day forward.
Right?
No. So... that's it. That's all the news that we have. Dustin, it has been awesome having you in here once again doing the news with us and helping add some nice insight into all the things going on with Ubuntu Budgie out there. So thank you for all of your work and continuing to support the community and continuing to support our show. It's always awesome having you on.
Well, thank you very much for having me on here. I appreciate it.
One last comment from the patron gallery. So it was about, here it is. Paul said XFCE isn't there on that article because whoever wrote it hasn't used peppermint.
That's very, very true. So it's been awesome having our patrons as well as our new producer Zebe there with us, helping to field the questions and talk with the patrons, and they get to hear this fiasco live.
Yep.
That's pretty crazy.
Thank you, Zeb, for helping us out. Thank you to all the patrons. We appreciate it. Yep. Dustin, appreciate you being with us. A big thank you to each and every one of you for supporting us, for watching, listening, whatever you're listening on or watching on. Thank you. Have a great week. And remember, the journey itself is just as important as the destination.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Destination Linux Podcast.
Oh my gosh. Why are all of our patrons canceling their... Why is everyone canceling?
It's all good. It's the magic of editing. I mean, all the patrons will know, but I mean,
yeah. The magic. They're gonna be like, never invite that guy back.
Never, ever.
You know what the patrons just thought at the end of the show is? Holy crap! Poor Rocco must spend 16 years editing each episode.
Martin says chargebacks incoming.
He's not even canceling. He wants his money back.